Hey, good morning, friends. I'm back again. Just one day later. Happy Valentine's Day. Man, the Fred Meyers yesterday, very crowded to like I've never seen it. Lines way long. No one complaining that I saw. People were in a good mellow mood because it's a big snow day outside, and that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen every day in Portland. This is not like one of those Midwest capitals such as Minneapolis, where I'm talking to David Koski here on Facebook. I think I made a error in my previous video where I talk with great confidence about how to map these shapes going across. These are plane nets, tetrahedra, space fillers, and I got two columns swapped. So the one on the far left, the column one, that's what we're calling a right, R-I-T-E. And how we get it again is we take what are called mites. Now, for context, this is the nomenclature of R. Buckminster Fuller, and it's not really. I think you could have a pretty fun curriculum where you do actually use these terms, right? Like, I am going to do that. But I could see you not wanting to, and yet still, the space filling discussion, which tetrahedra fill space, is of interest to you. So you put up with my jargon while you're here because you care about the topic, and then you leave synergetics alone because you're a math person and this is literature. But I understand, okay, if you don't want to use this nomenclature, not all of you. Now, some of you, like me, will because it works. But then when I go teaching it to teachers, I make mistakes, and that happens. So I'm showing you the context here of a mite. If I pull out 1/24th of a mite, of a cube, whoa, sorry. If I pull out 1/24th of a cube, that's what I call a mite. And you can tell from the chart, the way I've got them glued together here, the kind of the wide wing one, this one that kind of flies at you. I'm thinking of like John Boyd here, right? Is it John? The fighter pilot. Okay, that was a couple videos back. We don't actually see him. He's on YouTube, though, giving his talk about the OODA loop. So that's one way to make a tetrahedron with mites. And we're going to call this, okay, so there's a chart of on this stuff. There's a figure. These are the three-way to put two mites together. Now you see all these partitions. It looks like there's a lot more going on than just sticking mites together in this picture. And there is, because he's showing the A and B module dissection. By that I mean there's a way to divide every mite into three partitions. Two A's, a left and a right, and one B, a left or a right. And so before in the last video, I said there's no real chirality to these guys. Because if I pick any two at random, you know, like in Tetris, if you get the wrong L falling down, there's nothing you can do in flipping it around on the surface to get the other L. You would have to flip it in a way the game does not permit, right? And yet we would say those two L's are congruent, right, as they fall towards the bottom, the game Tetris. Now, the thing about mites is as they fall from the sky, you're never going to have trouble getting them to orient how they can orient. Yet internally, we could talk about a left and a right-handed build, whether it's a B negative or B positive. B is one of the other modules, 1/24th volume. Now remember, a mite is 1/24th of a cube, but the cube we're talking about is volume 3, so a mite we call volume 1/8, okay? Now the right is the other way that you can face bond two mites, right? Like I'm doing here, making it look hard. And so there's the right. And this is column 1, right? And I think in my last video, didn't I get those two swapped? I called column 1 um, the 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 it's the light and the right. and it's like a matter of mapping them to the Goldberg table. And the right, it almost looks like a regular tetrahedron in some ways. I mean, it's so. We had a beauty contest for it, it versus the might, and John Brawley took up um, the case of the right. Very strongly worded. This is a Korean War veteran who had a whole interesting kind of religion based around icosahedron, he called it. And wow. Anyway, I wonder if that archive still exists. That was a Yahoo thing. So there's the right, okay? And only recently, going back to this chart, have David and I cut it in half. And you can cut it in half in two ways, and each way gives you kind of a left and a right. But you get two lefts and two rights. I think that's how it's working out. And so you can get a box where they've got a difference. But if you have a box that's all one hand, that's enough to fill space. Two lefts make a right, two rights make a right. I think is how it works out now. So we're still re-looking at this. Like I say, you'd think there'd be a lot more focus. And remember, this whole Michael Goldberg article that we spent most time on last video, he's adding two more whole quote families, like infinite families, that are, I think, have kind of an accordion feel to them. And as you expand and contract in these columns, you get these space filling kind of. But I'd love to see an animation, because when I look at the diagrams, it doesn't just spring to life for me. You would think, I always wait for MIT or somebody. I'm blocking on them, right? It's like, why am I waiting? Why don't I do it myself? Well, honestly, as you've seen, I make very, very elementary mistakes, and I'm very finite. So there's a lot of stuff I haven't and cannot do. Like, I tried to turn the Stanley Theater in Jersey City into an IMAX palace where people enrolled in the downtown schools, like at NYU, would come over on the path and watch movies for credit, right? It's part of your syllabus to watch, like, The Universe with, like the Carl Sagan stuff, but it doesn't have to be IMAX, right? Once you've got a screen that big, you can project smaller screen stuff onto it, right? But if you want, because the Stanley is big. Anyway, I'm just giving you another example of how I failed to pull off that job, and many others. And, so don't wait for me to make all this cool video that we need, because we really could use, some really good graphics pipelines that know what they're doing, and not sit around waiting for Kirby to learn Blender or something, because that's just, in terms of critical path, that's not the critical path. Anyway, you've got the byte, right, and light. And speaking of inconsistencies, I've found passages in Synergetics where the byte is the hexahedron, what he's calling here the light. In other words, the third way to assemble these mites is to snap them together that way, and this is not a tetrahedron anymore. So there's two ways to do it where you're going to get, so you can get this kind of winged thing, the jet, the delta guy. And since two of the triangles are the same on each mite, there's really just going to get another one. You'd think given four faces, there'd be four ways to do it, but two of them are identical. And then there's the fat face way of bonding, and or the big face, that's what gives you that's not the biggest face. Actually, that's not a good description, but you get the right by doing it this way. That's the only other tetrahedron you can make with two mites, face bonding. If you face bond the third way, that's the light, which is what we're looking at down here. So, are we clear? I think so. That column 1 is going to be the right, and column 2 is the mite, column 3 is the byte, right? Column 3 is bytes. Byte and right basically are the two things that we're mapping to columns 1 and 3. Might, right, bite. Now I jumped around as I said that. Let me go left to right. Okay, left, this is the right. Okay, it almost looks like it'd be regular if you fold it up, but it's not. Then comes the might. Okay, that's what dissects into A and B's. This has a volume of 1/8. Since two of them make the right, it's going to be volume of 1/4 over here. Is that right? 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8. Now these volumes you don't have to apply, right? That's kind of synergetic mnemonics or namespace to actually give them relative volumes because they can scale, right, to any size. Okay, and then you have on column 3 you have the bite, which is the jet, the delta, and then you've got the quarter right, which means once you've got a right, you can do like put quadrants, like we do with quad rays. You can put a point right at the center of your right, excuse me, get the right back. President's Day, tomorrow, regional holiday. Okay, thank you. Okay, those are what we call notifications, and that's what's called pushing notifications. Like no matter what you're doing, you can be interrupted by these notifications. That's a setting. If you don't want to be, turn it off, that kind of thing. A lot of people want to get to notify you of things. So there is the right, and what I'm going to do with this is put a point at the exact center of it and explode it into 4 quadrants like we do with quad rays. And those are the quarter rights, and clearly if the right's a space filler and the quarter rights are identical to each other, clones of each other, then I've found another space filler, and the same logic with the half right. But you can go into studying that more deeply. That's what David Kosky's doing right now. And I'm going to leave you with all of that. Go back to snow day, and please have a safe storm, or winter storm, if you're in the winter, if you're in this very cold part, a cold snap across North America. I saw about the pileups, and it's really hard to drive. So good luck and be safe. Talk to you later.